So we have three items right now. Remove one, two items, one item, and boom, we have our empty state. Awesome. Thank you so much, Christina. Um, Welcome everyone. Glad to be here, back for another workshop with the UX Design Talk group. So, my name is Nima Tahami. I'm a product designer and a design instructor. My journey in product started back in 2011 when I started developing and designing dozens of apps, when the iPhone App Store recently opened up. So developed a few games, a few products since then, and worked with a ton of startups, product folks, teams on different products from e-commerce to some Web3 products and everything in between. And in 2020, I started teaching design online on platforms like Udemy, Skillshare, and most recently on Maven as well. And happy to have taught over 15,000 students. Yeah, and so I'm really excited to bring this workshop to you today, where we'll go over some of the basic parts of prototyping in Figma, but also a little bit more advanced parts, using variables, and going to really create a functioning prototype that, hopefully when you put in front of someone, they'll think it's the real application. Yeah, so a little quick tip for this workshop. Part of it will need the pro plan with Figma, just because of the way that the current advanced prototyping and like variables are set up. So feel free to follow along if you don't have the pro plan until that point, and then you can watch the rest of the workshop. If you do already have the pro plan, you may need to move the file that we'll share today to your pro account and then follow along from there. And we'll take the time to do that together. So before jumping into the project, I'm going to share my screen here. Awesome. There we go. Can you get a thumbs up if you guys can see this? Cool. Yeah, so this is a prototype that I actually put together for a recent course that I'm teaching on Maven. So this course, essentially, we put together two complete mobile and web apps. And these apps are, the functionality of it is it's an app called Hang Swap. So it's a marketplace where people can exchange luxury items and rent them out for special occasions. Say you're going to a nice event and you want to wear a nice watch, and you want to rent one out, you can do that through this platform essentially. So this is the prototype that we put together in that course, and I'll take you quickly through that to kind of showcase what this prototype looks like. Of course, this is the main flow when you're signing up as a user who hasn't used the app before, so you can input your information, sign up for it, and right away you can see some items near you that you can rent out on a daily basis. You can see the price, how far away it is, and you can even go as far as unfavoriting, favoriting items, going to the item page, reading more about it, booking the item. So everything's really dynamic, and we've used variables and some advanced logic to be able to pull this off. And even the prices, you can select some sample dates, and as you can see, the prices are updated based on when you know, what times you pick. You can confirm your booking. There's nice animations going on. And yeah, essentially, it's a very realistic mobile app prototype that we put together. And I'm hoping that in today's workshop, we can do a part of that. And the part that we're going to focus on is this favorites page here. So this favorite page is dynamic. So you can actually add items from your listings page to this favorites page, and it works as you can see. If you want to remove stuff, you can do that from here. And we even have a nice empty state. So once you do remove all the items from your favorites page, we have this empty state that shows up. And this is all in one frame in Figma. So today we'll focus on this favorites section. Again, we'll start with some of the basics of prototyping, and then we're going to get a little bit advanced soon. It might be a little bit advanced for folks who are complete beginners, but that's why the session is recorded. You can always watch it again. And again, because of the timing that we have here, we won't pause in the middle of the workshop. So we're going to do this workshop. So if you do have your Figma open and ready, you can follow along. If not, you can always watch it back later. So with that, I'm going to head over to the file that we're going to be using today. I believe it's in the chat. If not, we're going to share it just one more time for folks who are just joining again. Just drop it one more time in here in case you don't have it. Perfect. Yeah, so what you want to do is you want to actually click this toggle up here and actually duplicate this file to your drafts. So you won't be editing anything in this actual template file. So feel free to go ahead and duplicate this one to your draft. You'll see a button that says duplicate to drafts. And then once you do that, it should automatically open. If not, you can go to your Figma homepage and open it from there. And I'll do that myself as well. So I'll give everyone maybe 30 seconds to do that. And again, if you do have a pro plan from your drafts, move this file into that pro plan so that you can use some of those advanced prototyping. Awesome. So yeah, we'll start here where it says start here. So there's pages on the side. Just go to the start here one. And then from here, yeah, there's a tip on how to duplicate it. So hopefully by now you've duplicated this file and moved it to a pro plan if you do have one. So here's the steps that we're going to take. We're going to create a horizontal scroll for these categories that we have here in our main item listings page. So this is the main homepage of this app. So we're going to make it so that in the prototyping, you can see all the categories. Right now, you can only see 3 of them. So hopefully we can make it so it's scrollable. And then we want to connect this menu page that we have in our components library here. So we have a menu page, and what we want to do is once you click on the hamburger menu icon up there, we can open the sidebar menu as an overlay on our page. And then we'll move on to working on our actual favorites page. And this is where things will get interesting, and we'll jump into how to actually create that those connections and those variable unused variables to be able to pull off what you just saw. So we'll go through it step by step. So first of all, if you just select the first frame, so the item listings frame that we have here, you can of course present it here. So you can open it or present it using this button over here, and it will open in a new tab like this. And you can see what it looks like. And we want to do a few things with this. First of all, we want to actually show this in a device just like we saw earlier. So that in order to do that, what you can do is you can go by clicking anywhere on the canvas and going to the prototype tab up here. You can actually choose a device. So from here, we're going to choose instead of none, we're going to do iPhone 15 Pro Max, just because that's the frame that I use when we're designing this frame. So it'll be perfect fit. And so now this way, if we move back to our prototype tab here, in fact, for the zoom, I'm going to do fit to screen so it's easier to see. Now everything's essentially uh, put in a frame, in an iPhone frame like so. And we want to do a few things before we jump into using the category option here or working on the category. What we want to do is we want to fix this top nav bar. So no matter where we go in our prototype, it's always fixed to the top. And we're going to do the same thing here with this filter and sort buttons as well. And to do that, we can simply head on over to the prototype tab, which we already have. We can select our navigation bar item here. And instead of position, scroll with parent, which allows this nav bar to move and be scrolled away from the page. We want to actually choose what's called fixed to stay in place. So that will keep the item here or the nav bar in its place. So no matter where you scroll, now if you go back here, it will always be fixed to the top because that's where it is currently in the frame. And similarly, we can do that here with the filter and sort buttons too. We can do fix, stay in place. And now both of those are fixed, and this looks much more realistic. And then now we want to move forward to our category option here. Of course, there's more than three categories. There's in fact six, but we can't see them because they're overflowing outside of the page. So if you go up here, you can see if you do double click into the categories auto layout frame here, or just go to your layers panel and select this one where it says categories, you'll see, in fact, if you click, there's six of them in there, but they're not visible because of course, they're flowing off the screen. But something that I've done from before is that in the design tab, I fixed this element or this categories auto layout and made it so that it's fit to the screen. So by default, usually it's hug contents, which means that the frame size will match the items inside of it. But in order to use a horizontal layout or horizontal overflow in prototype for the scrolling, we need to actually make this fixed to the area that we want the user to scroll through. So because this area is only this part of the iPhone app, that's essentially what we're doing. That's why we fixed it to only this area. And so now under the prototype tab, for overflow, right now we have no scroll, but we want to actually change that and set it to horizontal, which means that we can now horizontally scroll throughout that frame. So now if we go up here, we can see we have horizontal scroll here now. We also have a vertical one, so we can go up and down. But for the categories, if we stop and start scrolling left and right using our trackpad or mouse, you can see that works. And that's exactly what we want. Awesome. So we have that working now. So that's our sort of first task on the list. Now we want to actually connect the menu page here, the sidebar menu here. And we can do that. Of course, we can go into the instance of that navbar component that we have up here and make the connection from the hamburger menu icon. But because we're using components for this navbar, we can actually just apply that connection inside of the component. You don't need to apply it inside of each instant. Just apply it one time in the component. Anywhere we use that navbar, we can create or utilize the same connection, so we don't have to keep creating those connections in the prototyping. And so to do that, we need to create a connection by double-clicking until we can select this hamburger menu icon, like so, and simply draw a connection like this to the sidebar menu. And on tap, instead of navigate to, which will actually navigate us away from this page onto the sidebar menu frame, we want to actually do what's called an open overlay. So open overlay will open this frame, the sidebar menu frame, on top of that listings, item listings frame that we have. So both of them will be open at the same time. So if we do open overlay, by default, these are the options that are set here, and I can show you what that looks like. We can click on here and the menu will appear. That's very cool. I can click away from it, but it doesn't look that realistic. Why not add a nice animation to it? And so we can do that by changing this instant here to actually do move in. Now, move in, as you guessed, as the name suggests, we'll move this overlay on top of the other frame that we're on. Right now, by default, it will move the overlay from the right side to the left, but we want to do actually from the left side to the right, like so. And we'll leave the animation options as is. And so now if we just do that again, it looks much better. We can click away here and it opens up nicely. Now this close button doesn't work right now, but there's a really simple way to make that functional as well. All you need to do, select it by double clicking into this frame, and you can drag a connection. And when you're dragging a connection in an overlay, because this is already tied to an overlay frame, you can see you have a couple options that you can just simply drag it to. So you can drag to close overlay. And so now this close icon will close the overlay too. So users can either click outside of it or this close icon, and both of them will do the same. Perfect. So this completes the first frame. So now we want to actually move on to our favorites page. So to do the favorites page, we can simply create a duplicate of our item listings page because it's pretty much the same. We have a bunch of items there, but we want to just show the ones that we have favorites. So I'm going to click on the item listings page and hit Command D or Control D if you're on Windows to duplicate this frame, like so. I'm going to just switch over to the Design tab here. Let's move it over a little bit and rename my new frame as Favorites. So in this new favorites frame, we'll leave the navigation bar as is. We'll remove the categories. We don't need that anymore. And we'll move everything else up by hitting Shift and the up arrow a bunch of times. And I'm just using Alt to see how much space I have from the top here until I have 24 pixels. Awesome. And from here, we're going to get rid of this list an item button. And here in this auto layout that you have, instead of the auto, you can go ahead and put in 0 so that we can just reset that auto layout to show everything from horizontally left to right. And we already have a line left. That's perfect. All we need to do is rename this favorites like so. And I'm going to hit Command D to add another text in here. And in fact, for this auto layout, we're going to do a vertical layout. So we'll select the parent frame here, make sure you have the nearby header selected, and do vertical layout instead with 8 pixels as the spacing between the items. And this one's going to represent how many items we have favorited. So we'll write 0 items for now. And for the font, I'm just going to change it to Source Sans 3, which is the body font we use, and medium. And do 16 pixels here for the font size. Awesome. So now we can get rid of this insurance card that we have here. We don't need that one. We just want to focus on what we need on this page, which is just the favorited items. Now, of course, everything right now is favorited, but how do we actually make it so that we start using variables to create a dynamic prototype? So what I've done here is if you click outside on the canvas anywhere, you'll see this local variables, and you can actually open up the variables from here. You might be in this general tab right now, or general collection. And if you click, you'll see this products one. And if you do switch over to the products one, you'll see we already have a bunch of variables and different modes that represent different products. And in fact, these cards here are getting the information all from the from here. Except for the favorited one. That's the one I haven't created the connection yet so that we can do it together here. So we have this variable down here called is favorited, and that represents whether the item is a favorited item or not. So when it's true, it means that the item is the user's favorite item. If it's false, like these last two, it means that it's not the favorite item for the user. So ideally, what we want to show is these first two products by default on this page and hide everything else. Now, to create a connection between whether the heart is filled or not, we already have a component set up called favorites button. And this favorites button component is already inside of the item listings card here. So all we need to do is really create a connection between whether that variable is favorited is true or false, and connect that to the different modes that we have here, or the different variants of this favorites button. If you click on the favorites button, you see we have a filled state, and we have a false and true. So we have the false one, which is for the not favorited items, and then we have the true one, which is for the favorited items. So to create that connection, all you need to do is double click into here until you select that favorites button instance, and you can make sure in the layers panel you have it selected. And then if you go over here where it says filled, of course you can manually change this to be not filled or filled. But what we want to do is actually apply that variable is favorited to this instance, or the property of the instance. So we can apply that here, and because it's the only Boolean variable, it automatically shows up there for me. So I can just click on it, and then it looks like nothing changed here, but if you go back to this frame, you'll see the last two is not favorited anymore. So it did work and it's only showing the ones that are favorited, or it's showing the ones that are favorited as the filled heart and the ones that are not favorited as the unfilled worm. Awesome. So now in our favorites page, what we want to do is only show the ones that are actually favorited. And there's a simple trick to do that. And that's using the visibility or layer visibility option in the Figma prototype panel. So, or sorry, the design panel here. So if you do go into the item list auto layout here, when you're inside of the, or when you've selected the auto layout frame, if you hit enter, it will automatically select all of the items inside. So right now I have all of these items selected. And of course, I can change the visibility of the layer here. I can make it so it's not visible or visible. And because right now I have all of them selected, I'm changing all of them. But what we want to do is make it so that it's dynamically tied to that is favorited variable. So whenever something's favorited, we want it to show. And whenever something is not favorited, we want it to be hidden from the auto layout here. And simple way to do that is to actually, on this eye icon in our layer, you can simply do right click. So make sure you right click instead of left click until you have this option is favorited here. And the second you click that, now only the ones that are favorited will show here. So just to, again, do that part again, because in case folks have missed it, uh, over here for the layer visibility, you can right click and choose is favorited, and that will hide anything that is not favorited, or the is favorited is set to false. Awesome. So now we have these items here. That's perfect. And we want to actually do a couple more things in here. First of all, we want to show the count of how many items we have favorited, so we can show it here. And we can also use that later to create an empty state or show an empty state here. And we want to actually make this button functional. Right now, if in the prototype, we click on the buttons here, nothing happens, nothing changes. So we want to make that functional as well. And before doing that, we're going to create a couple more connections so that we can actually easily switch from the menu page between these two pages, between the item listings page and favorites page. And to do that, let's go to our sidebar menu here, switch over to the prototype mode, double click until we have the listings button selected. So only the listings button here, and drag a connection to our listings frame here, or item listings frame. And we want to on tap, navigate to this page, and we don't need any animations for this one. We can just do instant, and that should work just fine. Let's close that one and do the exact same thing, but now for favorites. So by clicking on favorites in our sidebar menu, we want to go to, you guessed it, the second screen here. And we'll leave all the options as the same. So let's just test that that works so that we can easily switch between these two pages. We have our listings page by default. We can go to favorites. That works. We're on the favorites page. Go back to listings, and we're on the listings page. Awesome. So that part works. And now what we want to do is actually make this favorites button working or functional, so that by clicking on it, if an item is not favorited, so let's say the belt over here, we can make that our favorite item, or if it's not, we can remove it. And to do that, we can add some essentially variable setting through our prototyping. So if you go to the favorites button, we want to add a set variable to the unfilled state. So make sure you only click the unfilled state here, and make sure you're in the prototype tab here. And then we're going to click plus here, and on tap, instead of none, we're going to set variable. And for the set variable, we're going to go ahead and find is favorited. And we're going to choose true and hit enter. Or actually, we don't need to hit enter. We just need to click outside. There we go. So what this does is essentially saying that once you click on the unfilled state of this favorites button, change this to, or change is favorited, the variable is favorited in that table to true. And because we're using this on individual instances of this component, they already have the modes applied, so it will be unique for each different product. So we're not changing it for all products, we're changing it for that individual product that you're clicking on. And now we're going to do the opposite thing for the filled state. So if they click on the filled state, we want it to actually change is favorited to false instead of true. So to do that, select the filled state, same interaction, set variable on tab, is favorited, and we're going to set this one to false. Awesome. So now we can actually see this in action over here. If you go to our item listings page, if I click here, we remove that from favorites. If you go to favorites, it's not there anymore. Awesome. And from here, that should function as well because this is an instance of that component. So we can remove that and we don't have that as favorites anymore. If we go back to the listings page, you can see we don't have any favorites anymore here either. Awesome. So that's how you can use variables to create a connection to create a more advanced prototype. So now that's awesome. We want to do two more things here. One is that we want to start counting how many items we have as favorites and display that here instead of the 0. And the second thing is once we do get to 0, so once we have no more items favorited, just like how it happened over here, instead of showing this blank boarding page, we want to actually show this empty state that I've already created and placed here. And so to do that, we'll need to create two new variables. And to create these variables, simply head on over to the Design tab. Make sure you have nothing selected, so just select anywhere on the empty canvas so that you can open this variables table. And this is where we're going to switch over. We're going to switch over from products to general. So this is just a collection of variables, and we're storing these two new variables under this general collection. And we can just hit create variable. So we're going to create the first variable, and this one's going to be the number of items that we have as favorited. So we'll do a number variable because that one makes sense. And we'll call it total dash favorites. It's really up to you what you call it. The only thing I do recommend is just making sure that when you're creating different variables, they all sort of look like they're using the same type of wording, or if you're using dashes, that you continue to use that format. So I like this format, so I'll use the dash. And for the value, because by default we have two items favorited, we want to show that. And to show that, you can actually just manually change this value to 2. So now we have this total favorites variable, and by default, it's set to 2, since we have two of the items favorited initially. And we want to create another variable, and this one's going to represent whether we have no favorites at all. So once we have no favorites at all, we're going to actually change this variable to true. And once it's true, we're going to have that empty state show up. So this way, we can just create a variable, and this one's going to be Boolean because it just needs to be true or false, and that's the easiest one we can use for that. And we're going to call this one no dash favorites like this. And by default, we'll leave it as false because we do have favorites initially. We have two favorited items. If we didn't, we'd probably change it to true. So by default, we'll leave that to false, and this one we have as 2. Awesome. So now let's switch over and start counting how many items we have as favorites. But in order to show that, we want to actually tie that to this 0 number here so that we can actually see physically here that number changing. To do that, I'm going to click this 0 items and duplicate it using Command D. I'm going to hold Shift and select both of them and hit Shift A to create an auto layout between them. And instead of a vertical one, I'm going to do a horizontal one. And instead of 8 pixels, 0 spacing between them. Now what I'm going to do is, for this first one, we're going to get rid of this items text here and the space. And for the second text, we want to get rid of just the 0 number, and we'll leave the space and items in there. Now let's click just the number one, so number 0, and apply variable over here, which will go ahead and change this number to that variable that we're going to set. And if you scroll all the way down or start searching for total favorites, you should be able to see that total favorites variable we just created. So now this is following that variables. If you go inside of that table, and you don't need to do this, I'm just demonstrating. If I change this to 3, it will show 3 here, 4, 4. So you get the idea. So this works. All we need to do is now add some logic so that when we're adding items to the favorites, it starts counting upwards and it starts adding to the number of favorites that we have. And then whenever we start removing items from the favorites, it starts deducting and removing from the favorites, total favorites number. And all of that will happen, you guessed it, in the favorites button, because that's where the change is happening. This is where we're telling the app or Figma that, hey, we're adding new items or we're removing items. So you need to change that number and update it to the true one or the updated one. And so again, switch over to prototyping while you have the unfilled state selected. Go into the interactions and click on the one we already created. And we're going to add another action here. You can create multiple actions on the same tab. So we'll create another action here. And in this one, we're going to set the variable. And we're going to search for total favorites. We're going to make that equal to total favorites. And now we're going to do +1. So essentially what we're doing is, because we know that anytime someone clicks on this unfilled state, they're adding something to the favorites. And so the number of the favorites should go up by 1. And so that's why we're taking the current total favorites and adding 1 to it. And so we want to do the exact opposite when we're doing the filled state. We want to remove 1 from there. So to do that, you just do the exact same thing. For this one, set variable, total favorites equals to total favorites -1. And so Figma is going to do the calculation, and anytime you click on those buttons, it will start counting. And here, because we just made a bunch of changes, I'm going to hit R on the keyboard to just reset it. And might need to go back here. There we go. So now if we go to the favorites page, we have 2 items. Let's see. We click on it. Now we have 1 items, 0 items. Okay, so that works now. And if we go back to our listings and start adding a couple more items in here, let's see, does that work? Yeah, we have 3 items. Awesome. Perfect. So now how do we show that cool empty state when there's no items here? So we're going to actually go ahead and create a new action for our buttons here. And this one's going to change that other variable that we created called no favorites to true or false based on whether we're actually at 0 items. And this one, for this one, you can click on the interaction here and add an action. So I've selected the unfilled state first. Or actually, for the unfilled state, we know that if they do click on the unfilled state, they're probably favoriting something. So we don't actually need to check in the unfilled state. We only need to do the check on the filled state. Because when they click on an item that's not favorited, they're probably most likely, or 100%, they're going to change the no favorites to true or to false, sorry. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and add an action here, set variable no favorites to false. So by default, anytime they click on the unfilled one, it will change no favorites to false, and it will hide that the empty state that we have. But for this one, we're going to do something called a conditional logic here. So we're going to add an action for the filled state called conditional. And down here, we're going to check if total favorites equals to, so you can select this equals to option here, and the number 0. So we're telling Figma that Anytime the total favorites gets to 0, so no items is favorited, in that case, do an action. And so that action is whatever we define here, which for us is going to be setting the variable called no favorites to true. Because at this point, if you have 0 items favorited, then no favorites should be true, so that we can use that to show our empty state. And we can test if that works by going over here, copying our favorites empty state, hit Command C here, and I'm going to double click until I have my item list here and paste it using Command V. Perfect, now it's there. And we're going to do exactly what we've done for the other ones, but we're going to tie the visibility of this layer to the no favorites. So to do that, you go on to the layer portion of this panel, right click, and select no favorites. Make sure you select no favorites and not the other one. And again, because by default it's false, it should be hidden. So by default, we shouldn't have that empty state and only have it if we get to 0 favorites. And let's see if that works. So we have 3 items right now. We'll remove 1, 2 items, 1 item, and boom, we have our empty state. Awesome. So that's how you can essentially create a prototype that's functional and people can use it, and you can send this to someone, you can send it to clients in order to impress them on how this app works, or send it to developers to really show them all the different states your page can have. And that's really the point of doing these prototyping, and even taking it one step further and doing an advanced prototype like this one, to really showcase everything your app or your new page that you put together can do. So if you like this, I do teach a course on specifically how to put together this project, as well as the web version as well. And that can be found in the course offer page here as well. And for you folks here who attended and stayed until now, we do have $150 off the price of the course as well. So the next course actually starting next Wednesday. So if you are looking for a 6-week program to quickly take your Figma from wherever you are to the next level, then feel free to join us in this course. That you have the access to this course offer, and you can sign up from here. Awesome. With that, I think we'll open it up to Q&A. If you have any questions, or if you have any questions in the chat, we can take them now. Now, if you're looking to master your Figma skills or push your product design game to the next level, I do have a complete 6-week hands-on cohort-based course. The next cohort will be opening in June, so if you do want to sign up, there's a waiting list down below in the comments that you can click and join, and I hope to see you in the next video.